Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, December the 9th. And welcome to our commentary. Well, I got to begin with this case in New York. Daniel Penny was found not guilty. This is the Marine, of course, who was put in this trial. You remember what happened. You know, he tried to prevent chaos in a subway train, and in the process of holding down, I guess, a potential someone who was out of control, he ended up, the person died, and he was being accused of this or this or that. I mean, it was completely ridiculous, the kind of thing that I think has done the city of New York, frankly, and the courts in New York a tremendous amount of harm. But he's free now. He walked out. He's not guilty. And I congratulate the jury for having the common sense that the district attorney of that region, of that district, doesn't have. That we're talking about Mr. Bragg, you know, who I think ought to resign in disgrace after what he's done in that district. The two trials against President Trump, and now this one. I mean, how much more is this guy going to get away with? I mean, it's just an absolute travesty of a district attorney, and I think he should resign. But the tragedy is he's probably going to get reelected because of the district where he is. But hey, don't be surprised if more and more people don't want to live in New York or take their money out if they keep doing this kind of garbage. So I'm glad for Mr. Penny. I'm glad for Mr. Penny that he's free. Should have never been put through this garbage. I've got a post over at the American Thinker this morning. You can check it out, americanthinker.com. You can see it on the right-hand side, where I refer to an article that I saw in the news a couple of days ago, that Mexico may be violating the terms of the North American Free Trade Agreement by using Cuban doctors. You may be familiar with this. Mexico has been importing Cuban doctors, and they bring them in. You know, these doctors really don't negotiate their own deal. I mean, this is nothing more than a very cynical way for the Cuban government to get foreign exchange, because they're paid in dollars for the Cuban government. So they send these doctors overseas. They've sent them to Mexico, and the Mexican system hires them, not really a normal hire. But there are now reports that many people feel that Mexico is violating the North American Free Trade Agreement. I don't know if that's true, but there are intelligent people who are doing that, basically saying that Mexico is using labor outside of what the requirements are in the North American Free Trade Agreement. It's going to be interesting to see how this kind of an accusation is handled by the Trump administration as part of their negotiations with Cuba. But this is a terrible deal that Mexico is participating in. They should not be hiring these Cuban doctors in this fashion. Now, if they want to hire Cuban doctors and have these doctors come and negotiate their own contracts and be, you know, regular people working in the Mexican healthcare system, I guess that's one thing. But the way they do it, basically hiring these people and paying the Mexican government for them, is simply not acceptable. And let's hope that maybe this potential violation of the free trade agreement turns the trick and ends this practice on the part of the Mexican government. Well, I've got a post coming out tomorrow where I talk about what's happened to President Obama. If you've been following the news, President Obama is sort of losing his appeal. He's not as popular as he was within the Democrat Party. If you remember, they sent President Obama to talk to black men in Philadelphia to get them to vote for Kamala Harris, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well simply because he didn't have honestly a very persuasive message anymore. When you're Barack Obama and you live in mansions, and you live in a world of millionaires and all these liberals, millionaires and billionaires who keep paying your tab everywhere you go, you're just not going to relate to black people in the United States. And a lot of them are kind of tuning him out. A lot of Democrats beginning to feel that maybe Obama is part of the problem with the Democrat Party. He's not the same guy he used to be. I mean, he used to walk on water. And I think for a long time, I believe he was protected by the media. I mean, you go back to 2008, The coverage that this guy got in 2008 was ridiculous. Nobody ever asked him a difficult question. And then when he ran for president in 2008, he was treated like, the second coming of something. And then as president, he never really was forced to explain many of the things that he was doing. And one of the things that he did that is turning out to be a disaster is Obamacare. Obamacare is not working the way it was supposed to. Remember, it was supposed to cover everybody. Well, that is true. It is covering everybody. But the cost of healthcare is going up and up and up because Obamacare was never really about healthcare. It was about getting the government involved in more and more of the hospital and care in this country. So Obamacare is failing badly. And I think the Trump administration is going to have to take a look at it. And maybe we can go back to what we should have done in the first place, which is to simply give people tax credits. Give you a tax credit so you can go out and buy private health insurance. I think that's the best solution. They should have done that before in 2009 when they were debating Obamacare. But Obamacare has only benefited the big insurance companies, frankly, and I guess Obama, because he can say that he passed Obamacare. But the name Obama is not what it used to be. And I don't think it's ever coming back. I mean, he'll be around, of course, and he'll speak at the next Democrat convention, and he'll get, the attention and adoration that he always gets. But he's not. This is not the party that he thought it was going to turn into. The Obama party in 2008 was going to be a new emerging coalition. If you remember that book about the emerging majority that was supposed to be, Hispanics and non-whites were going to create an emerging majority that was going to create a majority for the Democrat Party. That hasn't panned out. When you look at the results of 2024, more Hispanics voted for Trump than before. And when you look at Black men and you look at Hispanic men and now even married women voting for Trump. So this is not the party that Obama thought it was going to turn into. And here we are. I just don't think Obama is in the future, or his ideas are in the future of the Democrat Party. So check out my post. It'll be available tomorrow. A couple of things that I want to talk about. First of all, this incredible contract, baseball contract, coming out of New York. The New York Mets have signed Juan Soto to a contract of $750 million. Now, look, take the money if you can get it. I don't want to be hypocritical about this. If you can get the money, take it. And I'm happy for Juan that he can make that kind of money. Look, take it. Take the money and run. That's, you didn't put a gun in anybody's head to sign this money. But $750 million for Juan Soto is going to have an impact in the game. When you, on top of Ohtani getting $700 million, I mean, that's $1 billion, $1.5 billion in two players. And if I was a member of the players union, if I was just let's say a mediocre player in the major leagues, sort of surviving from year to year, trying to make the team and trying to stay on the payroll, I'd be worried about something like this. Because I think what's going to happen in Major League Baseball is the same thing that happens in Hollywood, where you've got 20% of the actors in Hollywood make 80% of the money. And then the other 80% make 20% of the money. And if you go to Hollywood and, your waitress or your waiter or your Uber driver or whatever is an actor, well, that's what they got to do to survive. Whereas, the 20% making the 80%, they're the ones living in mansions. And it seems to me that that's what's happening in Major League Baseball. More and more, the top players are making top money. And then you have a bunch of players in the middle or down who are simply not going to get the kind of money that they thought they were going to get. I mean, they're still going to do okay. I don't mean to cry for them, but they're just not going to do okay. And I just think that they got to do something to protect at least the players, and also the small markets. That's the other thing too. The reality is, it's not a coincidence that the top players are going to LA and to New York. Those are the top markets, and those are the top TV markets. And that eventually is going to have an impact on many of the small markets. I mean, there are cities like San Diego, like Oakland, Seattle, Minneapolis, or Minnesota, Kansas City, St. Louis, Tampa, Baltimore, these cities, or Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, they do not have the TV markets that these other big cities do. And if it's just going to be all who can afford them, who can spend the most money, it's all going to come down to big TV contracts and, owners with deep pockets. Well, that's going to be good for certain teams. I don't fault them for that. And it's going to be great for certain players like Juan Soto. And again, I don't criticize Juan for signing the contract. I hope, good for him, make a lot of money. But if you're thinking a little long term about the game, is this really good for the game? I don't think so. The NFL has a salary ceiling or whatever they call it, payroll ceiling. And I think the NBA does as well. And that kind of forces the teams to live within certain reality. Baseball had always been the game where families could go. You can take your family to a game for $25, $30. How much longer are you going to be able to do that? I don't know. I don't think for a long time. I mean, I think those days are kind of gone. And baseball depends on, they play a lot more games. So they depend on a lot of games, between April and October being played in August and September when your team is out of contention. Well, who's going to go out and see the games and pay those kinds of prices? I don't know. Not many people. So I just hope that people realize that this is going to have an impact on the game. I think the small markets are probably screaming this morning, saying, hey, what about us? Who's going to take care of us? I mean, there's only so much you can charge for tickets in a place like Kansas City or Tampa and so on. And, what's going to happen to those teams? I want to say happy number 73 to a fellow by the name of Nando Parrado. Some of you are going to say, who was Nando? Well, you probably don't know who he is unless you remember what happened in late 1972 when an airplane crashed in the Andes and a bunch of people survived being in the Andes for months and months and months. And they were part of a rugby team from Uruguay that was traveling to a tournament. And the plane crashed and these men, many of them froze to death. But there was a small group that survived and eventually was able to get out. Well, Nando Parrado was one of those men who survived, and he's 73 today. And I've read a little bit about his life. He took his family back to see the site of the crash, also some of the places that they had to survive and all of that around there. So it's an amazing story of survival. Nando Parrado, that is his name, originally from Uruguay. He still lives in Uruguay. And I guess there's some of the other survivors too who live there in Uruguay as well. But what a great story. I remember the crash when it happened. And there was even a movie that was made about this crash, and they were eventually rescued. But they were rescued because of the persistence of people like Nando Parrado and some of the others who managed to travel and run into people and take all kinds of risk and walk through the snow and some very cold weather to get help. It's a great story. It's a great story of human survival and what human beings will do to take care of each other. That's another part of this story. So thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and I see somebody telling me that the movie was called Alive. That's it. That was the name of the movie, Alive. And it came out, I don't remember when, but it was a great movie. It's a great story. That's the bottom line. It was a great story. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. If you're tuning in, thank you. And we'll see you the next time. Bye-bye, everybody.